Cinema Unchained turns 50 as we talk about favorite and least favorite films of 2022 so far and share our most anticipated films coming out this summer and reveal our favorite filmmakers of all time. I'm Darius Delsoin.
And I'm Joe Acierno. This is Cinema Unchained. All right, folks, welcome back to the one and only Cinema Unchained podcast. As you may have heard in that intro, this is our 50th episode. And for our 50th episode, we did want to try something a little bit different. You probably noticed that, we're not going to be talking about like regular headlines or anything like that, but just a couple of discussion ideas that, we brainstormed within the last, let me look at my watch, 48 hours or so. And so, we're going to, yeah, right? It's quarter of a century old in terms of episodes. You know what? Let's just forget that joke. Okay. And you know what? Let's just get right into it before I ramble even more and just talk out of my ass even more. So before we talk about our best and worst movies of 2022 so far, don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe, and hit the bell to get all notifications for more fun, honest, and engaging talks about film, TV, and other motion picture headlines, whether you're on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And now you can expect a new episode every Monday at 2:15 p.m. Alrighty, now, like I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about our favorite and least favorite favorite movies of 2022 so far. So, you know what? Let's start out with the least favorite. Let's start out with the least favorite because, what? Let's end that segment off on a high note. And the reason why we want to talk about this now with this episode is because, even though it's only May, we've already had like a few prominent releases. And right now, this is the turning point of like the quote, summer movie season, right? Mm-hmm. Which I never understood. Because it's May. I've seen so many like commercials and like trailers for things saying like, this summer, see this movie, and it has a May release date. I'm like, sir, that's not it. That's not summer yet. That doesn't technically start until June 21st, but for the sake of this episode, we'll play along. So, for my number 3 worst movie of 2022 so far, and I don't see this changing anytime soon, is going to have to be Morbius. Based on the Marvel comic, a biochemist with a rare blood disease accidentally infects himself and gives himself the powers of a bat. Yeah, this movie is as bad as that logline sounds. I mean, I never understood that particular comic book story. I mean, I'm not much of a comic book fan myself, but I'm trying to think of that of that pitch meeting. Now, Darius, maybe you know better than me. Which one came out first, Morbius or Batman? Like, in terms of, like, original comic book releases. It had to be Batman, right?
Oh, Batman.
Okay, yeah. Just wanted to be sure. I'm just trying to think of that, like, original concept meaning. So we're like, okay, let's take the concept of the Batman literally. And...
I mean, technically, there is a character in the Batman universe called Man-Bat, so...
Oh, boy. All right. I don't even want to dig further on that one. Let's just... Because we already got this terrible movie to talk about yet again. So... we reviewed this movie somewhat recently, but again, worst movies of the year so far. I had to put this in there for my list. Nothing about this movie feels authentic or original. It feels manufactured. And again, obviously, in the most literal sense of the word, every film is, quote, manufactured. But what separates good films from bad films is how well they do at making you forget about that fact. I think, Darius, to build on your point that you made in the review, how this feels like an early 2000s sort of superhero movie. And again, just, theorizing on what that concept meeting was, or that pitch meeting was, I can imagine the producers being like, okay, remember all those superhero movies we saw in the early 2000s? Let's do exactly that, but just not as good. And that's what this movie pretty much is. There are some tense moments throughout. I'm sorry, what was that last bit?
No, I was just saying, yep, exactly.
Yeah, there are some tense moments throughout this movie, but it's definitely not enough to save it. And thinking about those tense moments, they could have capitalized on some of those horror moments, and that could have elevated the film a bit more, honestly. But of course they didn't. This movie was delayed so many times, not worth the delays, not worth how many times I saw the trailer in the theaters before I would see my actual show. This exceeded my expectations, but this just goes to show how low my expectations for this film were. I was saying this over and over again anytime we talked about this movie, and I was right. And the movie is still not good, even though it was a little bit better than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm honestly, my number 3 is, or really in any order, not important, but Morbius is definitely one of them for least favorite movies for me. This movie, basically everything Joe just said, but also it's like, as a comic book fan, and even as someone who was at least, it's weird because I was actually interested in this movie. I was the one person out of us two that I was like, I'm actually looking forward to it. But then the movie came out, and I'm like, this sucked. This just
Don't want to
freaking
say I told you so,
sucked.
but
But yeah, I think the thing is with me with Morbius is that I think it had certain seeds in here that had potential to be good, but it just fumbled and it lost its own identity along the way. And like I was saying, it felt like an early 2000 movie, and not in a good way. And I mean, I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with that. I mean, the Spider-Man 1, 2, 3 were all kind of early 2000s. But again, that's Sam Raimi. That's a whole different thing.
they did it well. That's the difference.
Yeah, they did it well. And so it's like, I think, and you kind of get the same sense with the Venom franchise too, even in the first one where it felt like an early 2000 movies. And it felt like that's just the style they're going for. And it's 2022. It's not really working in 2022. Well, clearly Venom 1 made $1 billion, I think. So I digress, but still.
Hey, listen, plenty of terrible movies out there have made a lot of money. Have you seen the Twilight movies? I've seen the first 3, case in point.
I say nothing about that in my opinion, so I'm gonna stay safe. No. But yeah, Morbius, it just fell flat. The villain was uninteresting, underwhelming. I think the villain, honestly, they could have done something, but again, he just fell flat and generic. That this movie overall just wasn't a good experience. I'm in the theater, and I think I was either next to you or one of our other friends, and my head is just down to the side like the entire time of disappointment.
Mm-hmm. I remember just wondering when it was going to end. I'm like, this movie isn't that long in length, but it's feeling longer than it is, which is never a good sign.
Exactly. So Morbius is definitely one of mine worst movies, least favorite movies of this year.
Yeah. So another movie that I want to get into next, and again, is another one that we reviewed somewhat recently, not a good couple of weeks at the last few weeks at the cinema. Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. Magic zoologist Newt Scamander teams up with Albus Dumbledore to stop the dark wizard Gellert Grindelwald from seizing control of the wizarding world. Now, I will say, and I mentioned this in the review too, some things were done right, mainly Dumbledore's writing and the visuals, and that's pretty much it. I was stunned at how dull this movie was, considering the fact that I'm a diehard Harry Potter fan, as I've mentioned many times on this podcast, and I just did not care. 3 movies in with the Fantastic Beasts series, and I don't care about any of the people involved, except for one character, Jacob Kowalski, played by Dan Folger, but he is not enough to save this franchise in any sense of the word. And again, I just don't care about any of these people. This movie was 2 hours and 22 minutes long. This movie really dragged. And keep in mind, the Harry Potter movies, they're all at least around that length long. On average, they're about 2.5 hours each. And those movies don't drag. They really don't. And this series is always going to be compared, maybe a bit unfairly, to the Harry Potter films. But you know what? If you're going to do a spin-off series, you have to be able to back it up. The Harry Potter films had rich novels to back them up. They had so much to draw from. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, right, was literally a book that they read in the Harry Potter universe. And it just goes to show like how thin they're stretching this one really textbook from the novels and from, I don't recall it being mentioned so much in the movies, but I do remember it being mentioned in the novels. So this movie, and the worst part about all this was The Secrets of Dumbledore left the door open for a sequel. And I'm like, why? They should just end it here. This franchise is just, declining very steadily. And it's just at the point where you can't justify making any more movies in this franchise. You really can't. And it's sad to say about something related to the wizarding world, again, given the fact that I'm a diehard Harry Potter fan. But you know what? You have to know when enough is enough. And this is far beyond enough.
Yep. Secrets of Dumbledore was also mine. I have a feeling we have a very similar list now.
Yeah, I was just thinking that myself.
But yeah, Secrets of Dumbledore is also one of mine. It was weird. It's not weird, but I just watched the last movie from that franchise like earlier that week. So that movie was very fresh in my mind, and I wasn't a fan of that one. And I was like, maybe this one has a little bit of hope for me. maybe I can be optimistic of the third one. Maybe it could be better. Maybe it could get back on its track. And it fell off the track even further.
Yep.
It was just disappointing all around. Certain characters just didn't line up. Certain dynamics I wasn't feeling. Ezra Miller's character was a huge disappointment, honestly. To me, like I said, and I said it in the review, this film feels like the Rise of Skywalker for this franchise. And to me, like, again, as in how people perceived it afterwards, even in Star Wars, because even I wasn't a fan of that one. But again, it was just disappointing overall. Like, I actually wanted the movie to be done for, just like Morbius. So yeah, like, Secrets of Dumbledore, easy my next one, for sure. Oh man, I wonder if our number one is the same. Now I'm really curious.
I have an odd feeling it's not, because our opinions on this movie were different. So my number one worst film of 2022 so far is The Bubble.
Okay.
It
is different.
All right. So
I was like, thank God it's different.
Yeah, right. While stuck in a quarantine bubble, the cast and crew of a film production attempt to make a movie. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And again, the biggest disappointment with this movie is how much potential it really did have. It had a great cast behind it. Karen Gillan, Keegan-Michael Key, Pedro Pascal, just to name a few. Leslie Mann. And it had Judd Apatow at the helm. Again, this is the same guy who gave us A King of Staten Island, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, all of which are terrific movies. But the problem is, with those other films, they were funny and they had weight to them. Whereas with The Bubble, this was barely funny and there was like no weight to it whatsoever. I just did not care. I didn't have fun watching it. Whereas again, those other three films that I mentioned over and over and over again, I felt something and I had fun watching them too. This really could have been great. It was very sloppy. It was all over the place. It was just poorly executed. It was longer than it really needed to be. And considering everything that this movie had going for it, again, great director, great cast, great, potentially great story. Because again, I was intrigued by this movie when we talked about the trailer. I was really fascinated by it. I'm like, okay, this whole relation to, COVID-19 and, being on a film production set, throughout the pandemic or during the pandemic, I want to see where they go with this. The sort of like cabin fever thing too. I want to see where they go with this. And you know what? They blew it. They really blew it. And I'm just really glad I didn't see this in theaters and I saw this on Netflix instead.
Yeah, honestly, looking back, and again, I'm not, it's weird for me because I just like stupid, fun, dumb comedy. Like, I just have a crack at that. That's just me personally. So when I heard you say you didn't like it, I was like, you know what? Understandable, because it's not for everyone. It is stupid. It is dumb. It doesn't make sense. There's barely any story, and it's like when you put all those pieces together, yeah, it's not a good movie. But again, for me, I just had dumb fun. I was just like, oh man, this is stupid, but why am I laughing? Probably laughing because it is stupid, but yeah. So for me, my number one is Uncharted. I still despise this movie. I still do.
That was a twist. How did I not see that one coming? I didn't even think of that one.
I still despise this movie still. I don't like it. I don't like what they did with Nathan Drake. I don't like Sully. Yes, the dynamic is for the movie that they wanted to do was interesting, but I didn't feel it. Nothing of this movie felt like Uncharted until some of the third act and just small character things they did, but overall it's weird because I had fun, but as the fan of Uncharted in me that has played Golden Abyss, all the Uncharted games, and I adore that franchise, I still don't like this movie. I still don't. I like Tom Holland, but I don't think he should have been Nathan Drake. Mark Wahlberg, I'm not really a big fan of his, so when they casted him, I did not see it. Even when he put the post of him with the mustache, I was like, that looks stupid on you. Like, that's still not selling. I'm sorry. It's just, just fuck this movie. I'm sorry.
The only thing I can think of now with Mark Wahlberg playing Sully is I could just imagine him just going like, hey guys, we can steal some gold now.
Oh
my God.
Again, as a fan of me, I was just very disappointed. Even from the trailers, I was like, I'm not sure. I hope it's good. again, I love the game. The game franchise is near and dear to my heart. Just like the Halo franchise, that's near and dear to my heart. But this movie just fell apart for me pretty quickly. Overall, in the dynamics, these people, they were not the characters, in my opinion, from the games. So
Okay, so now, if you weren't as much of a fan of the games, right, do you think you would have liked this movie more?
probably.
Okay.
Here's the thing: I enjoyed it. Like I did have a fun time with it, but overall, even as a fan, like it's a weird thing for me. It's like I had fun, but at the same time, it's like there's still certain things throughout the movie. I'm like, this is dumb. This is dumb. How do you do this in front of people? And how do you snatch that? That doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of it just didn't make sense for me too as well. So.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, I had more. I remember having fun watching this movie, but I remember being able to pick out a couple times, like sitting in the theater. I'm like, all right, what's going on here? Like, how's this happening? Why is this happening? But I digress. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those are our top or really bottom 3 movies of 2022 so far. But now onto a lighter note, where I really just again end this topic off on a positive note. We're going to give you our 3 favorite movies of 2022 so far. And now, talk about what you said before about ours having very similar lists with our least favorite films of 2022, Darius. Mm-hmm. I have an odd feeling that our 3 movies or our 3 top movies of 2022 are going to be the same. I don't know if they're going to be in the same order. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make a crazy prediction. They're going to be in the same order. That's just what I'm saying. But
okay, same order. Okay,
yeah, same order.
So I'm gonna have to rethink my order now. Okay.
Oh, thanks, asshole. Thank you so much. All right, so for my number 3 film of 2022 so far is The Northman, based on the legend of Amleth by Saxo Grammaticus. Sure. A Viking prince seeks revenge for the murder of his father. And again, one of the things that really stood out to me so much about this movie, other than just the production value itself, right? This movie is ambitiously mounted and directed by Robert Eggers. He does an amazing job on this film. Epic scale and story. Action is terrific. Cinematography, there's so many one-shot illusion scenes. This finale is just spectacular. It is just absolutely spectacular. I remember when it concluded, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I just witnessed that in the venue that I just witnessed that in. I really would have loved to see something like this in IMAX. I don't know if it was released in IMAX, but looking back, I wish I could have seen it in IMAX. This movie is dark, it's brutal, it's authentic, both visually and emotionally. It's deceptively complex with the story, with the directions that the plot goes in, with the themes of vengeance. And this is just an all-around stunning movie experience. The performances across the board were really strong, especially Alexander Skarsgård as the lead. And it's really sad how this movie didn't do well at the box office. It's made $52 million against a budget of $70 to $90 million. And just see this on the biggest screen that you can. Like I said, I regret not seeing this in IMAX.
Yeah, the Northman was just a fantastic movie. But that is not my number 3, actually.
Fuck.
The Northman is my number 2. So okay. I will just say that right now. The Northman is definitely my number 2. Everything Joe said, I love Norse mythology. I love how they played upon the different aspects of just the Viking era, the ruthlessness, the brutality. To me, this felt like the right Norse and Viking movie that I've always wanted. And I love revenge stories. I'm a sucker for that. Mm-hmm. So Northman is definitely my number 2. But my number 3 is actually The Adam Project. I still adore this movie.
All right. Okay. All right. Elaborate for me, please.
I still adore it. It is such a, to me, it was just a heartfelt story of mother and child and fatherhood, and not really fatherhood, but just how all these 3 different dynamics play in such a sci-fi setting of fun, but also being able to know who you are as yourself, and even understanding that not the world revolves completely around you. People who are still hurting are hurting. They might be putting on a face, like his mom. And again, one of my favorite scenes in that movie is at the bar when he's talking to his mom and saying he knows and trusts her, he feels sorry, this and that. I'm like, I felt for that. I felt for this dynamic. Ryan Reynolds was absolutely stellar. Ryan Reynolds and the kid, that dynamic was great. Even rewatching it, I'm like, I still love this movie. This is definitely my number 3. As much as I like some of the other films that I had to like put and really make sure like, did I love it that much or whatever, Adam Project still happened to be in number 3 for me. And I absolutely just love this movie.
Yeah, this movie was definitely a good time, and ironically enough, considering some of the storylines of the film, like with what he's dealing with his dad, like I actually watched this with my dad too, and it was a good time. It was a really good time. So my number 2 of 2022 is The Batman. After fighting Gotham's crime for 2 years, the Batman fights to reveal the city's corruption while figuring out the plans and motives of a serial killer targeting Gotham's elite called the Riddler. Now, what I will say from this movie, gone is the cartoon campy stereotypes that we expect from comic book films, at least, again, with this film. And that's something I appreciated very much about this film. And I also appreciated very much about the Dark Knight trilogy. But again, we're going to keep this with the Batman for now. The things that stood out to me the most, I loved how grounded and realistic it was. But at the same time, it's grounded and realistic, but very ambitious at the same time. The story is dense. There's so many moving parts. None of it feels extraneous. The visuals, gorgeous, dark. Again, that adds that grimy and grounded aesthetic and realistic aesthetic. And I think, Darius, this is a point that you mentioned when we reviewed this film. Like, Gotham itself felt like a character. And you have to thank director Matt Reeves, in large part for that. He did an excellent job directing this. There are just multiple memorable scenes that had the audiences cheering. Michael Giacchino, amazing musical score. The film moves very well, especially for a 3-hour film. Which, if you really think about it, that's very impressive. And here's the thing. It doesn't feel shorter than 3 hours. It feels its length, but not in a bad way. It feels its length, but because of how much happens, not because it moves too slow. Performances across the board are terrific. Robert Pattinson is a great Batman and a great Bruce Wayne. I called it from the beginning. As soon as he got cast in, and there were people that were uncertain, I said no, considering what he did in The Lighthouse. Because again, everyone, associated him with the Twilight movies and weren't as confident in him because of that. And again, I can understand that, for sure. Haven't seen the first 3 Twilight movies myself. But again, because I saw him in The Lighthouse, I called it from the beginning of him being cast. I said, no, he's going to be a solid pick. He's going to be a solid Batman. This is worth the drive all the way out east to Stony Brook to see in IMAX. This is the best Batman film I've ever seen, second only to The Dark Knight. And a sequel, of course, was announced to this film. And considering how much this movie did, how much this movie really accomplished, I have no idea how they're going to top this one. No idea.
Oh, man. Our lists are actually kind of different. But yeah, for me, this was a hard one to do. Because I had a total of 5 favorite movies of this year. So I had to really narrow it down to 3. So man, god damn it, Joe, this was hard. But my number 1 would have to be, I already discussed number 2, which was The Northman, because you mentioned it, and but for right now, number 3 is Adam Project, 2 is Northman. My number 1, and this is a doozy, is Sonic 2. Okay,
get
this
the
movie
fuck
is
out of here. No way.
I'm kidding.
Okay, I was gonna say.
I just wanted to hear your reaction. No, my number 1 is honestly The Batman. As a Batman fan, this felt like the most detective comic Batman movie ever. Gotham felt like a character. It was gritty. It was dark. I love seeing this year 2 Batman still trying to figure himself out. I love the score. The score felt like a character, and we're along for the ride. Like I said, I love The Batman. This movie to me was just masterfully well put. I adore a lot of things about it. Some comic changes, but I'm okay with that because it served the story and gave some of these characters, one specifically, Catwoman Selena Kyle, a bit more of a purpose and even more weight to her throughout the film. And I absolutely adore just a lot of what they did with Batman and this world. And I really hope that in the sequels that they plan, they don't confine to stereotypical or back to the cliche stuff of villain and everything, or like, Batman versus one person, but more or less explore the world of Gotham, how Gotham really created the villains, and how maybe introduce new villains that haven't been properly done in a live action interpretation. Again, for me, I would love to see, for the type of movie this is, I would love to see the Court of Owls from the comics come into play. I think that would be perfect. Even in a third movie, like if you're gonna use that Illuminati, essentially, use it in the third movie. But everything else about the Batman, Robert Pattinson did great. Love Gordon. Oh, he was a perfect. As much as I love Gary Oldman Gordon from The Dark Knight, this is my favorite Gordon.
Yeah.
In the Batman, even though it's a race swap, he is my favorite because to me, I really got that look of Gordon. And again, everything about this movie I just adore. Like it's I can't praise it enough. I absolutely adore it. And I know not a lot of people like it or are on board with it, but for me, I'm 100% on board. So
it's funny. I don't remember hearing as much blowback for Jeffrey Wright's casting as Jim Gordon. And from what I understand, his performance was received very well.
Yeah, I mean, some people are just going to be on the fence of the whole race swap thing, even with Catwoman, Selena Kyle. To me, I saw Selena Kyle, honestly, especially in the old comics, the short hair and everything. I'm like, oof. Oh, yeah, let's go.
But interestingly enough, Catwoman was played by Eartha Kitt back in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken, who's black.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't really so much of a race swap overall. I mean, it's a race swap from, Anne Hathaway to, Zoe Kravitz. But it's not as radical of a change as one might think.
Yeah, I mean, Catwoman is a weird character because there are some instances where she's portrayed as Caucasian in the comics, and some instances where she's portrayed as mixed, black and like Spanish, and she kind of looks like it too. Yeah, which is why for me I'm kind of fine with it.
Yeah, me too.
Because I mean, again, it was literally the hair that sold it for me. The hair and the jawline. I was like, yeah, that's Catwoman. That's Selena.
So obviously nothing but great things to say about the Batman, but still, that is not my number one film of 2022 so far. My number one film of 2022 so far is the heartfelt acid trip that we reviewed a few weeks ago.
I knew
Everything, everywhere, all at once. A Chinese immigrant ventures across the multiverse to save the world and sees all the lives she could have lived in the process. This movie was quirky and crazy with a legitimate purpose. It was emotionally and thematically deep. And it uses the zaniness to address mental and sentimental themes, all of which are connected to the characters, which, of course, sure, there are a lot of audience members out there that can relate to these themes and concepts as well. And I love how, this is something I noticed between this movie and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the idea of the multiverse teaching lessons about, like, the lives that we could have lived, right? And how we wonder what could have happened if things went differently. But at the same time, it teaches us to be appreciative of the life that we have and the life that, we live. And like I've said, it's very tempting to get lost in imagining what could have happened. But like, no, it's important to stay mentally in the life that you live in. Because at the end of the day, fantasizing about what could have happened, what use is that really? There's really just no use to it. This movie had, a very unpredictable way about the way it moves its story. It was funny. Everything felt weird, but natural at the same time. It's an innovative and energetic film. This movie starts, and it just does not stop until the end. And one of the real achievements of this film, too, is, again, terrific cast. They all give multiple performances each because they're all playing, multiple versions of themselves with slight variations, but you put all those slight variations together and you get a very layered performance, and all of which are anchored by a just wonderful Michelle Yeoh. So props to Michelle Yeoh, props to the Daniels who directed and wrote this film, props to everyone involved with this film for making something truly unique and unforgettable.
Yep, definitely.
Yep. All right, so now, for all of you that are with us still, that topic was a bit of a hefty one. In terms of least favorite movies, or even favorite movies, are there any films that maybe you feel like we should have included on here for best or really for worst? Leave your thoughts wherever it is that you can. And now, before we talk about the most anticipated movies of the summer, don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe, and hit the bell to get all notifications for more fun, honest, and engaging talks about film, TV, and other motion picture headlines, whether on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And as I mentioned before, you can now expect a new episode every Monday at 2:15 p.m. All right, now before Darius and I reveal our favorite filmmakers of all time, and now, as I mentioned before, this is like the turning point of the year where we get into the, quote, summer movie season, right?
Yes.
So for this episode, I'm defining the summer movie season as now until September 21st, when fall actually starts, right? Little gray there, but whatever. We'll have fun with this anyway. So, Darius, what would you say what are you going to start off this list with? What's your number 3?
My number 3, to be honest, my number 3 is odd for me to say this because you know how I feel about this movie, but Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
Thor: Love and Thunder is my number 3, and I did not expect for those words to come out of my mouth. I mean, the thing is, it's like I'm more curious about it and how it's going to progress the MCU forward, and I'm really interested, especially out of some things Taika Waititi has recently said, actually revolving around Natalie Portman, in that she's going to be. It's a mixture of me being worried, but also interested in that she's going to be a lot funnier of a character, Lady Thor, in the movie. So I'm curious to see if she's going to be funny, and knowing how they did Thor, and his character in Ragnarok, and how the comedic chops of Chris Hemsworth, how that dynamic is going to play. And, every time I rewatch the trailer, and again, I rewatched it again and again before, I get a bit more interested, actually. I get a bit more interested. Chris Hemsworth looks fantastic. I can't wait to see Zeus. I can't wait to see Christian Bale as Gore. It's weird because now I can't wait for it, and I'm actually very interested. And Natalie Portman just looks amazing as Lady Thor. I'm not a fan of this inclusion of this character, but live action wise, she's looking good, and so I'm pretty interested.
I think as at this point, I'm fairly confident in Thor: Love and Thunder because, again, there are definitely a lot of moving parts from a character perspective that seem to be included in this film. And a lot of times I'd be wondering, is this movie going to bite off more than it can chew? Is it, too much for it to handle? But given the fact that Taika Waititi is at the helm, again, most of my faith comes from Taika Waititi and what he can do as a filmmaker. Again, Thor: Ragnarok, in my opinion, is the best Thor movie so far. And obviously, Jojo Rabbit, an excellent, excellent film. So I have full confidence in Taika Waititi's abilities to helm this film. But for my number 3, I'm sorry.
Real quick, it's weird you say that because Taika Waititi is the reason why I'm worried about the film.
Okay, before I get into my number 3, you got to elaborate on that.
Because it's like, look, as much as I enjoyed Thor: Ragnarok, that's not the story for something like Ragnarok, in my opinion. And I think the comedy was just a bit too much in that film, so that's why I'm a bit worried with Thor: Love and Thunder because of really specifically the uses of comedy. And for me, when it came to Ragnarok, that story, I don't think it's like I had some enjoyment, but overall, I wasn't too big on it. I didn't like how Ragnarok was portrayed. I didn't like how Thor didn't feel as powerful as I think he should have compared to Infinity War Thor. So it really felt like certain things were just stripped away, and I wasn't a fan. That's the reason why, again, I love Jojo Rabbit. I think he did great with that, but with Thor, I wasn't too fond of it. And so with Thor: Love and Thunder, again, that's one of the reasons why I'm worried about it. So, well, I have to wait and see. I'll be wrong, but like I said, I'm in a mixed bag, but I'm still looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think with Taika Waititi's involvement, I think it depends on what exactly the story ends up being. Because again, you're talking Ragnarok, the end of the hell's the name of the universe? Asgard. You're talking the end of Asgard. Didn't have the emotional weight it should have with that movie for something that serious. Whereas again, Jojo Rabbit was dealing with basically, Nazi Germany and, the Holocaust and everything like that, right? While that movie was very funny, it had emotional weight to it that Thor Ragnarok didn't have. So I can definitely understand that point. It all depends on how heavy the story in Thor: Love and Thunder ends up being, in my opinion. That's my little prediction there. But yeah, okay. So now my number 3 is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Based on the 1970 novel by Judy Blume. After a sixth grader moves from New York City to the New Jersey suburbs with her parents, she navigates the beginnings of adolescence. The story seems really interesting. I may or may not have mentioned this about 10,000 times on this show before, but I'm such a sucker for coming-of-age stories. I read a few of the Judy Blume books when I was younger, and I really enjoyed them. Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, Super Fudge. Now, I haven't read the book that this film is going to be based on, but I probably will before the movie comes out. And now, no promotional material has been shown yet for this film, but this movie does have some promising pedigree attached to it. The writer, or really director, screenwriter for this film is Kelly Fremont Craig, and she did a film called The Edge of 17, which is a great film.
Love that movie.
All right, such a great movie, and just based on what she's able to do with that film alone, she's a solid pick for a coming of age dramedy. And on top of her, you have the cast, Rachel McAdams, Benny Safdie, and Kathy Bates. Now, Benny Safdie is, he does a lot of acting too, but he is one of the co-directors and co-writers of Uncut Gems. So,
this is going to be good.
Yeah. So, this is going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to this one. I really did more research into this movie. Take another look at my watch, about 24 hours ago. And I'm like, what, I want to see, some promotional materials, some promotional marketing. But based on this alone, I think this is going to be a great time. I think this has potential to be a really solid movie, solid coming of age movie that can stand with, other movies of the same kind. And this movie is set to be released in theaters September 16th of this year. So technically, like I said before, the summer is over. So it counts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So your next one, what do you got?
All right, my number 2, easily Men. I love Alex Garland. I love Ex Machina. I love Annihilation. I love Devs. I really like his take on how he explores science fiction. To me, it's one of my favorite sci-fi aspects of storytelling. Taking these, Ex Machina with what's real and through the Turing test, Annihilation, of reflection of our reality. Absolutely love it. And Devs, when it comes to ascending godhood to a certain extent. Again, I think he's just an exceptional director. I love his take. So with Men, it doesn't seem like it's sci-fi. It seems more hard thriller. Mm-hmm. I'm still looking forward to it. I'm still looking forward to see his interpretation of, I guess, men in general, maybe manhood, whatever it may be. I am very interested. I'm very curious, and I'm very excited for this film.
Yeah, same here. That's gonna be a time. That's definitely gonna be a time.
Yeah.
And touching about what you were saying about Alex Garland, I think the reason why his films tend to stand out so much is because of how cerebral and at the same time chilling he makes them. He makes us feel with them. Right. That's the approach he takes with them. And I have an odd feeling that Men is going to be no exception to that rule. So okay, now my number 2. Now here's the thing: these last couple movies that I'm going to mention, they don't have any promotional material attached to them yet. So Darius, you might hate me when it comes to editing later, but I'm sure you'll be able to find something. So my number 2 anticipated summer film is 3,000 Years of Longing. A scholar encounters a genie who offers 3 wishes in exchange for his freedom, which leads to unimaginable consequences. Now, this is a fascinating story, and I wonder how it's going to differentiate itself from Aladdin. But from what I understand, it's an epic fantasy romance film, right? And the biggest hook for me is that this film is written and directed by the one and only George Miller, who gave us Happy Feet and the Mad Max series, particularly Mad Max Fury Road. Now, considering the distinctive style that he has, mixed with an epic fantasy romance, I'm hooked. I'm already hooked. I can't wait to see what happens with this one. And keep in mind, too, this film has a similar crew from Mad Max Fury Road. Director of photography John Seal, editor Margaret Sixel, who's actually married to George Miller, which I think is really cool, and co-producer Doug Mitchell. All 3 of these were either nominated or won Oscars for Mad Max Fury Road. So considering the talent that's behind this film, the storyline, I believe, who is it? Is it Yeah, Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton. Okay, how did I not mention them immediately too? So this is going to be a great time. Like, I don't even have to see any promotional material to know that this movie is going to be a fantastic time. That is really going to be something that stands out. Because, again, given George Miller's capabilities as a filmmaker, considering the fact that he made one of the greatest action movies of all time at 70-plus years old, I mean, this guy's got it. This guy's got it. This movie is set to have its worldwide premiere at the Cannes Film... How do you say it? Cannes Film Festival? Cannes Film Festival? Whatever. Supposed to have it... I'm sorry?
Oh, no, you keep going, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this movie is set to premiere at the Cannes Film Festival May 20th. So it's coming up soon.
Shoot.
Yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. But it's not going to be released everywhere in theaters until August 31st. So yep. So, we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm fairly confident in this one.
Man, that sounds interesting. I mean, Idris Elba, George Miller. The second you said George Miller, I was like, oh, Fury Road? Oh, man. Okay, I'm in. But yeah, so for me, my number one, and I think, Joe, you're going to know this one. Quickly has risen to one of my favorite film directors, Jordan Peele, Nope.
Yep.
I'm excited for this movie. Anything Jordan Peele makes at this moment, I'm just excited. Again, I loved Us. Oh my god, what was the other one? I loved Get Out. I loved. I know I'm talking about Jordan Peele. And I forgot the name. I mean, I remember how I felt. That's the thing, Get Out was just this. It's really well done, psychological, deep when it comes to just racial superiority and slavery a bit, mental slavery, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Us, loved it. I like, just from those two movies, he has quickly risen to just one of my favorite directors. And I'm excited for what he does with Nope. And it happens to be a genre he's tackling, which I love, which is sci-fi. So I am very excited for that. So I mean, there's not a lot for Nope at the moment, but just putting two to two together of how he approached horror previously, he's approaching sci-fi. He has Steven Yeun and some returning actors I absolutely love. I'm just excited for this movie. So
you may be surprised to find that my number one anticipated film of the summer is Nope.
Yeah.
Yep. So for anyone that doesn't really know exactly what this movie is about, residents of an isolated California town pay witness to an obscure and terrifying occurrence, and that's all we know so far. And you know what? The marketing of this movie has been terrific. We don't know too much about the story, but we know the feel, and I know you are too, I'm already sold on that feeling. We don't really know anything other than that something fucked up is happening. Is it an alien invasion? Who really knows at this point? The storyline has really been kept under wraps. But the trailer, every time I watch the trailer, I watched it on my laptop again yesterday, and I was still chilled. I was still scared.
Yeah.
Anytime I watch this in the theater, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be absolutely spectacular. Trailer keeps me on the edge of my seat every single time I'm watching it. Of course, Jordan Peele, he's obviously risen to not just be one of the most prominent filmmakers, but really just one of the most prominent voices in horror too. It's just so strange how he went from being synonymous with comedy to being synonymous with horror, and he's done both of those so well. He's obviously a creative force to be reckoned with his own unique way of doing things that doesn't feel anything like anyone else has really done before, and Nope is going to be no exception to that in my point of view. Like you said, the cast, you have Steven Yeun, and you have some returning cast members, Daniel Kaluuya, who worked with Peele on Get Out, gave a terrific performance, got his first Oscar nomination, very well deserved. And this, like I said, I truly don't know what to expect. The only thing I know is that it's going to be something unforgettable. It's going to be scary, it's going to be unforgettable, it's going to be an all-around great time. I'm seeing this in IMAX. This is an IMAX film for sure.
Yep. I'm definitely seeing this with IMAX with my dad. I'm excited for Nope. There's nothing more for me to say.
Yep. Yeah, and this movie is set to go in theaters July 22nd of this year. So, ending off the show, something I noticed when I thought about this topic, we've been doing this show for over a year now. It's kind of odd that we haven't talked about our favorite filmmakers so much.
I mean, yeah, I don't think we've dedicated a full episode to it, but I think some people got a gist of who our favorites are. But yeah, who's your favorite, Joe?
Okay, so
Who's your number one?
I was coming up with this list, and I feel like my picks feel kind of cliche, but after looking at all the movies that I've watched and really enjoyed, because like I keep a catalog, like I do movie reviews of everything I've watched, and like, I gave them like, a little score on 1 to 100, and I started noticing some trends when I was looking over this list of movie reviews that I have. And almost every time I watch a film from these directors, and again, I've seen a lot of films from these directors, I not only get reaffirmed of my love for film and the filmmaking process, but I get more motivation to make my next film happen.
Mm-hmm.
So my number 3 favorite filmmaker of all time is the crazy, the zany Quentin Tarantino. This guy worked in a video store before getting into film. He's, of course, best known for Pulp Fiction and Django Unchained, and most recently, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, all of which are a great time. When I think of that 90s indie scene, he's the first one that comes to mind. And that's mainly because, again, he works in a video store before, really getting into film. And anytime I think of like a video store like Blockbuster or whatever, I automatically think of the 90s and the early 2000s. So on top of that, his feature debut was Reservoir Dogs, which again is one of the more influential films of the 1990s, followed by Pulp Fiction, which, again, is arguably the most influential indie film of the 1990s. He is just terrific at orchestrating and extending suspense and tension, none of which ever feel excessive. Like, it's weird. Like, he has an odd way of doing things that feels explosive and over the top, but they're somehow in the best way possible. He somehow does this without being tacky and campy. Again, going back to what I was saying about suspense and tension, I think of the first hit that Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta go to in Pulp Fiction. I think of the opening of Inglourious Bastards. Taking about what I was saying as far as, his action and his climaxes and his finales that are just over the top in the best way possible. I think of that final battle in Django Unchained. I think of the Manson family attacking Cliff Booth and Rick Dalton at the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Holy shit. That entire finale sequence is just bananas. I went to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood twice. First time I saw it, had a great time watching the movie, and then the finale just capped things off for me. I'm like, oh my God. Then I went to see it the second time, and the entire movie, I'm like, oh, all right, this is all great, but that finale is going to be crazy. And it was just as crazy the second time. He's got a very unique and non-linear way of telling his stories. Obviously, one of the things he's most known for is his dialogue, very stylish dialogue, quotable dialogue, wicked sense of humor, killer soundtracks. So Quentin Tarantino, obviously, he's as famous as he is for a reason. So he's my number 3.
My number 3, this was a hard one because it's really tied. I love both of them equally. So I'm just going to say both of them.
Go ahead.
Give
us 4.
Alex Garland and James Cameron. Alex Garland for obvious reasons, as I've mentioned before, and James Cameron because of things like Titanic, Terminator. He's just excellent in what he does when it comes to these technologically advanced movies, and he always constantly tries to push that forward when it comes to his movies, which is why I'm excited for Avatar: Way of Water now. I'm officially excited. I'm officially in. So James Cameron, definitely those two are in a similar boat for me. So
yeah. So I mentioned before, what makes Alex Garland stand out, but James Cameron, of course, is one of my favorites too. He's not on this list for me, but he's definitely one of my favorites. Again, just this idea of how immersive and transportive a film can be. Like, I always associate that with James Cameron. So the man, he's from what I understand, he's determined and tough as nails. He has a singular vision, and he is where he is for a reason. So my number 2, again, this kind of feels, like I was saying before, as far as my picks feeling kind of cliche, my number 2 is Steven Spielberg. Arguably, he's the most commercially successful director of all time. Jaws, E.T., Indiana Jones, made him a household name, and rightfully so. He's been criticized for being too sappy before. But I think I mentioned this when I talked about West Side Story. There's a sweet spot that comes right before the line where you cross into being overly sentimental. And of course, has Spielberg crossed this line before? And, it's impacted his film a little bit. Yeah, of course. There are times where, of course, he's been a bit too sappy. But he knows how to hit that sweet spot right before crossing that line. And whenever he does, it's always unforgettable. And the thing that I feel makes him stand out the most is his range as a filmmaker. Across any kind of story. He knows how to tug on your heartstrings, but at the same time, gut punch your senses. You take a look at the wide variety of stories that he's told, and that trend is consistent, especially considering how many movies he's made. His accomplishments as a filmmaker alone are just astounding, just aside from being commercially successful, right? Imagine being able to make one feature film, right? Just in your life, imagine being able to make one feature film. Okay, imagine being able to make one feature film that's good, or really good. Imagine being able to make two that's good, really good. Then imagine making two in 1 year. Imagine making two in 1 year that are two of the most iconic films of all time. 1993 was the year of Steven Spielberg. Jurassic Park and Schindler's List came out that same year. And again, two of the most successful and iconic and unforgettable films of all time. Schindler's List is in my top 5 films of all time. And again, fast forward, a couple of decades to 2021, West Side Story. He's somehow made a remake of a classic film that, in my opinion, topped the original. And I know I'm not alone in that opinion. So, Steven Spielberg, again, he's a household name for a reason. He's where he is for a reason. And it's weird. It feels cliche, but at the same time, the more I think about it, it's really not that cliche to say, oh, Steven Spielberg is one of my favorite filmmakers. Because again, the man knows what he's doing. He really knows what he's doing. So that's my number 2.
Yeah, my number 2 is Christopher Nolan. I love his approach to especially when it comes to certain comic book heroes. I love how he explores really the sensational aspects of sci-fi. It's very similar to Alex Garland. But again, he takes it to this whole other level of just you have to rewatch it over and over again to really understand it. Inception is still one of my favorite films of really all time. Absolutely adore that movie. I love Tenet. I love just him as a director. He seems like just the type of person that really understands how to tell a very complex and even intricate story that has so many layers. Rewatching The Dark Knight and the whole Batman trilogy, I have a new love for that. I have a new love for The Dark Knight Rises, actually. That's what I actually have. I have a new love for that movie specifically because of just how The Dark Knight ended off, and the theme of, living long enough to see yourself become the villain, and how The Dark Knight Rises actually plays into that really well, more than I thought. And again, I rewatched it recently, which is why I'm like, wow, this movie is spectacular. Or, it still has its flaws to a certain degree, but just how it mirrors The Dark Knight, I was just like, wow, I really like it. Christopher Nolan, easily my number 2. Absolutely love him as a director. So I can't wait for Oppenheimer from him.
Yeah, stole words right out of my mouth. I can't wait for Oppenheimer too. I'm really looking forward to see what he does with that one. But yeah, no, Christopher Nolan's definitely one of my favorites of all time too. He's he's another one with a singular vision, singular complex vision too. He is definitely, I feel like he's the thinking man's filmmaker. But that's just my personal opinion. All right, so my number 1 favorite director of all time, Darius. I have an odd feeling you know who my number 1 is.
I already know.
For anyone who's had more than a 10-second conversation with me about films, they'll probably know that my number 1 filmmaker of all time is the one and only Martin Scorsese. He has... I feel like looking back at what I've learned about film, most of it came from him. I learned how powerful and effective it can be for dramas to be both funny, for dramas to be funny, and for comedies to hit hard. The first one that comes to mind is The Departed. It's a brutal and dramatic crime saga with a hilariously dark sense of humor. I learned from him that the main character doesn't necessarily have to be a morally upstanding person, just has to be fascinating and charismatic. Again, I first learned this with Henry Hill in Goodfellas. I watched Goodfellas when I was 15. And as I'm watching the movie, I'm like, oh, he's doing all these terrible things. Him and his buddies are doing all these terrible things. They're cheating, they're stealing from people, beating up people, intimidating people. He's cheating on his wife. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know I never really knew until then that you could do that with a movie character. And again, that's prominent in him. You see that in Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull. You see that in Jordan Belfort in The Wolf of Wall Street. It's weird. Like, I've heard people say, like, he makes the same films over and over again, like just rise and fall stories. But at the same time, there's just a certain authenticity to his films. And they have and I think that comes in large part from the violent and profane nature. He looks at the flawed and or darker parts of humanity. And I just feel like a fly on the wall of whatever setting he builds whenever I watch a film of his. And, one of the things that stood out to me the most is his trademark use of voiceover, fourth wall breaking narration. And that's one thing I've definitely taken inspiration from in making my own films too. And I feel like he does it in a way that's not cheap. He's made memorable scenes with both simple and complex techniques. I think of the opening scene in Raging Bull. It's that static shot of, Robert De Niro, kind of just bouncing around the boxing ring with that beautiful music playing over. I think of in Goodfellas, a Copacabana tracking shot where Henry Hill first takes Karen through under the restaurant, through the kitchen to get their special seat because Henry's connected in a sort of way. He's just, and again, he's another director with a great ear for music. He's got a kinetic, and his films have a kinetic energy, and I'm just captivated no matter how long the film is. His passion for film is really contagious too. I really love watching him talk about movies. Anytime I need advice or motivation for film, or I really just making the film, he's always the first one I watch. With the language and violence and thematic elements that he puts out there, which has caused a fair bit of controversy, and the new territories that he's crossed into, he's, in my opinion, the boldest filmmaker out there. After making mainly violent, mature films, right? He went for Hugo, which is a family film, and he did an amazing job with that. He made a movie as, let's say, explicit as The Wolf of Wall Street when he was in his 70s. Think about all the things you see in The Wolf of Wall Street, and that was made by a man that was at least 70, 71 at the time. He made a movie as massive and innovative in terms of visual effects as The Irishman in his mid to late 70s. In my opinion, he is the one true master of cinema. And I know Darius might not agree with that because of certain things he said about the MCU, but, I understand where he's coming from.
What he says about the MCU is true, considering how Phase 4 has been going. But, like I said, that's just a whole other thing.
It's definitely a whole other thing. But, yeah, Martin Scorsese is, in my point of view, like I said, the quintessential movie maker. But that's just me.
All right, number 1. Joe, you know this. I know this. It honestly has not changed all too much. There has been other directors that have definitely are either in that number 1 range, but for me, whenever I see this director, how he talks about film, you have a similar experience with Martin Scorsese, but for me, with this director, is always energetic, is always, when I see behind the scenes on set, he's always kind and excited, he's collaborative, what people say about him is he's very collaborative, he's open, and this filmmaker has created every time I see his films, I get a sensation. Again, I'm not saying I don't get it with Northman or Batman. The Batman in this year might be the closest to what this director has done for me for years, considering one of my favorite comic book movies of all time is actually from him. And that is Zack Snyder. I still adore this man to this date. I still adore his work. I know not a lot of people like his approach, like how he does things, like the changes he did with the DC stuff, which is totally understandable. But for me, every time I see, for an example, every time I rewatch Man of Steel, I get that faith, I get that hope again and that optimism, to be frank, in humanity. But and just in general, there's just a sensational feeling from that movie specifically that I always get and is always reignited in me. And Zack Snyder he just does a lot of things, in my opinion, right. I like his stylistic approach to the camera work and cinematography. Things feel like a painting, and you can see behind the scenes, he talks a lot about paintings, actually. He's big into paintings. He's big into the comic book look and really wanting to make sure that it captures it. Oh, yeah, he's really big into artwork and painting specifically. Actually, I remember even when he was discussing, I believe it was Batman v Superman or Justice League. He wanted certain shots. Certain shots were actually. He actually stated which painting inspired certain shots, which I found fascinating. I was like, wow, hearing a director talking about paintings to this degree is really incredible. But again, Zack Snyder, he's just one of my favorites. He still is. I know a lot of people don't like him. Understandable. If you don't like me for saying it, understandable. I don't care. I love the man. I love his enthusiasm, his approach, and it's unfortunate how certain things happen to him over the years, and it was exploited. But again, he still stands to tell for me as to why I go see IMAX movies. Almost all of his films I've seen in IMAX in recent years, honestly. And it's just a whole different feeling for me. Like it just feels like a giant comic book splash page sometimes, or just a giant just painting. 300 is a great example of just personally, it just feels like almost every shot is just like a work of art. That's just me. It just feels like a work of art. Something I can like put on my wall as a poster. I absolutely love the director. Love his work. I'm excited for his Star Wars inspired film, to be honest, Rebel Moon. From the concept art, I'm like, this looks really interesting. I'm excited. Anything he does, honestly, I'm really excited for. So, Zack Snyder is still my favorite, number one. So.
All right. I haven't seen too much from Zack Snyder. I think the only movies that I've seen from start to finish, if I remember correctly, are Army of the Dead and Man of Steel. I don't think I've seen anything else. Like, I've seen bits and pieces from his other films, but like as far as like the ones that I've watched in full completion, like those two are the only ones. And there are definitely a lot of other directors that I like out there more than Zack Snyder, but I definitely see that he has a distinct visual style, and I understand like why he has the fan base that he has. I understand why he has the certain criticisms that he has, but I definitely see more why he has the fan base that he has. So
exactly, it's like I understand all the aspects of why people don't like him. I understand the aspects of why people do like him, and for me, I'm in the aspect of I still like him despite the stuff I don't like about his work, but it still manages to capture. Again, Man of Steel, I don't know how much I'm going to say this, but it is still one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. It still is. Even with the Batman, as much as I love the Batman, Man of Steel is still one of my favorites. It just is.
Okay. All right, well, there you have it, folks. Those are the 3 filmmakers that I think it's safe to say have fueled our love for film and filmmaking the most and make us want to talk about films the most. And, there you have it. For all of you, are there any filmmakers that we didn't mention on here that you would have mentioned if you were in our positions? Leave your thoughts wherever it is that you can. And most importantly, leave why you would have mentioned that particular filmmaker. And just like that,
I still have more. But
so do I. This is a tough list to make. It was a really tough list to make. My number one was very obvious. My number one filmmaker was very obvious. But the other 2 spots to fill, it was a little bit on the tougher side. But yeah, don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe, and hit the bell to get all notifications for more fun, honest, and engaging talks about film, TV, and other motion picture headlines, whether you're on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And like I mentioned before, you can now expect a new episode every Monday at 2:15 p.m. We'll see you next week.